They said the footage didn't exist anymore. But I saw it. And now I can't close my eyes without hearing SpongeBob whisper my name. Before you roll your eyes and scroll away, just listen. I know how it sounds. Another lost episode story. Another internet ghost that someone cooked up for clicks. But this isn't like those. This isn't fiction. What I found wasn't supposed to survive. And the people who made it, the people who tried to erase it, left something behind that still moves when you're not watching. Guess it started the way all terrible stories do, with nostalgia. You remember Nickelodeon, right? That bright orange splat, that weird, wonderful chaos of the 2000s? We all grew up with SpongeBob, the laugh, the jellyfish, the Krusty Krab jingle that felt like it could never die. That's what made what I found so wrong. Because it should have been harmless. But the moment I saw that file name, I knew something was off. It wasn't labeled like an episode. It didn't even use the show's naming convention. Just 4 words, SpongeBob _EP_final_reel. It sat in a forgotten corner of the internet, buried in a folder that shouldn't have been indexed. The metadata said it was created in 2005, the same year the show's creator was hospitalized. The same year Nickelodeon's archives went through a massive cleanup. Back then, they said it was just maintenance. But now, looking at what I've seen, I think it was something else. People love to talk about red mist or Squidward suicide. The ones that turn up on Reddit or 4chan. Grainy VHS tapes claiming to be banned Nickelodeon episodes. But those are easy to spot. They feel fake. This one didn't. The colors were too sharp. The frame rate too smooth. The sound, it didn't hum like an old TV recording. It breathed. And before I go further, let me make something clear. If you ever see a thumbnail of SpongeBob's face, not smiling, not laughing, just staring, with static crawling through his eyes, don't click it. I mean it. They scrubbed it from YouTube, Reddit, even archive.org, but fragments keep popping up. People re-upload it for clout, for curiosity, for laughs. But they never last long. The ones who watch it, who really watch it, say they can't sleep right anymore. That they hear wet laughter through their headphones, even when they're off. A few said they saw something in the reflection of the screen. Something that looked back. I didn't believe them either. Not until last month. I'm not supposed to be talking about this. There are NDAs, takedown notices, even threats. Nickelodeon's legal department has been chasing this footage for over a decade. But they're not chasing it to protect their brand. They're trying to contain something they made by mistake. And I know how that sounds, but you'll understand soon. I'm not here to scare you for fun. I'm here because I need someone else to see it. Someone else to share the weight. Because once you've seen it, you'll start noticing it too. Tiny flashes in old SpongeBob reruns. A frame that doesn't belong. A laugh that lingers too long. They said the footage didn't exist anymore. But it does. And there's one frame, just one, that can slip into your dreams if you've seen it. I wish I could tell you which one it was. It all started when I got an email from someone who used to work at Nickelodeon. It arrived at 2:17 a.m., sitting in the corner of my inbox like a ticking warning I couldn't ignore. The sender's name was just a string of letters. CRAN, no last name, no signature block, just that. The subject line read, "You weren't supposed to get this." Normally, I would have deleted it immediately. Spam, phishing, another anonymous creep trying to scare people online. but something about it stopped me. Maybe it was the fact that the email came from a Gmail address registered under a Nickelodeon domain, or at least it used to belong to one. The first line was innocuous enough. "Hey, I don't know if you're into odd media stuff, but you might want to see this. I used to animate for Nickelodeon. I shouldn't be sending this. Seriously." I laughed nervously. Used to animate? Right. Like some disgruntled cartoonist sending me a rare storyboard for clicks. But then came the paragraph that made my blood run cold. "There's an episode you've never seen. We called it Red Mist Reanimation internally. It wasn't for broadcast. It shouldn't exist outside the Nick Vault servers. Please, if you open this, delete it afterward. And don't share it." I paused. NICK Vault. Do not copy. The words hung there like a threat hidden in bureaucracy. I'd read about the Nickelodeon internal servers, the ones animators joked about as the lost archive of the damned. Everyone joked. No one admitted to ever accessing it. And yet, here was a stranger or an ex-employee claiming they'd smuggled something out. Attached to the email were 3 files. Their names alone set my teeth on edge. red_mist_preview.mov.sb_final_render_corrupted.avi.readm. The last one. A tiny text file simply said, "Do not underestimate what you're about to see. Once you watch, you can't unwatch. Delete everything afterward. For your own safety." I couldn't stop myself. Every rational part of my brain screamed to close the email, to report it as phishing, to ignore the haunting curiosity crawling under my skin. But another part, the part that always chased forbidden corners of the internet, leaned forward. I skimmed the rest of the message. It mentioned production names, casual workplace gossip that anchored the surreal claim in a strange, terrifying realism. I was on season 3 of SpongeBob, mostly background animation. Worked with Vincent Waller, Derek Dryman. Yeah, those guys. Nobody talked about it, but the animation tests started getting weird. Things we weren't supposed to animate started showing up in the drafts. The files ended up in Nick Vault. There was a line I still can't shake. We never broadcast it because it remembered us. And it wasn't supposed to. Remembered us. The words repeated in my head like a chant. What does that even mean? It's just SpongeBob, right? A sponge in a cartoon under the sea. But the tone of the email suggested otherwise. Something alive had slipped through the coat of pixels and animation cells. I stared at the attachments. Corrupted, small, almost harmless in size. My pulse quickened. Every horror story I'd ever read about lost episodes surged to the forefront of my mind. But none of them had this weight of authenticity. None had this level of detail. "Please," the email concluded, "don't ignore this. You need to see it to understand. And when you do, delete everything. Keep it from spreading." I hesitated, hovering over the mouse cursor like I could stop fate itself. The room was silent except for the hum of my computer. Shadows leaned from the corners. I thought about turning away, walking away, pretending I hadn't seen this. But curiosity, that dangerous familiar itch, wouldn't let me. I clicked the attachment. I remember the moment I pressed play like it was a ritual I shouldn't have performed. The familiar yellow sponge bounced across my screen. Patrick trailed behind, and the cheerful tinny theme song hit me with a wave of nostalgia so strong I almost laughed. For a moment, it felt like I had fallen into my childhood bedroom, a place safe and bright. Everything seemed normal. SpongeBob's square pants flopped in perfect rhythm. The Krusty Krab gleamed in its warm palate. And even the seagulls outside the windows chirped like the cartoons we'd grown up with. I leaned back, letting the comfort settle over me. This is harmless, I told myself. Just a weird lost episode. Nothing more. Then it began. The laugh track, which had once felt like a comforting background, started to warp. It twisted, slowed, and stretched into a wet, wheezing sound, like someone trying to laugh through tears. My stomach clenched. SpongeBob's smile, the familiar beaming grin that had greeted me countless times, lingered too long on the screen, curving upward unnaturally. His eyes, which normally sparkled with cartoon innocence, seemed heavy, almost human, as if he were aware. The Krusty Krab emptied before my eyes. Tables, chairs, even the cash register faded into shadows. The subtle background chatter vanished, leaving a silence that pressed against the edges of my eardrums. SpongeBob moved with his usual exaggeration, but there was something off. The motions too fluid, too purposeful, as though the animation itself were conscious. And then he started repeating his catchphrase, "I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm ready." At first, it was normal, a simple repetition. But each time, the cadence slowed, syllables drawn out, the pitch bending downward, becoming hollow and discordant. My chest tightened. Something in the tone, in the subtle tremor, didn't belong. It was a voice I recognized, but it wasn't Tom Kenny, someone else, crying beneath the synthetic laughter, layered beneath the track. I couldn't place it, but I knew instinctively it was real. Human. I squinted, focusing on the frame, trying to rationalize it. Maybe it was a glitch in the corrupted file. Maybe my imagination was playing tricks. But no matter how I tried to convince myself, the sound persisted, that wet, uneven laughter paired with a low, muffled sob that seemed almost apologetic. SpongeBob's eyes darted toward the camera, or at least the space where the camera would be. His grin stretched further, stretching impossibly wide, the edges of his mouth creasing unnaturally, as though the image were pulling itself apart. He whispered something that made my blood run cold. "I see you." It wasn't animated. The mouth barely moved, but the whisper was clear, intimate, directed at me. I froze, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. My heart was hammering against my ribs like it wanted to escape. This wasn't a cartoon. It couldn't be. Cartoon. It couldn't be. The room behind him began to warp too. The bright, familiar colors bled into one another. Yellow merged with red. Blue streaked into black. The world of Bikini Bottom dissolved, and I realized the laughing track hadn't stopped. It was everywhere now, echoing inside my skull. The wet laughter became a chant, punctuated by a quiet, human sobbing, an undertone of grief stitched beneath the cartoon melody. I blinked. When I opened my eyes, the static began. Tiny flickers across the screen escalated into violent distortions, tearing through the familiar shapes. SpongeBob's form melted and reformed in impossible ways. The camera angle, or whatever the episode used, jerked unpredictably. And then, the worst part, the laughter didn't stop. The sobbing didn't stop. The whispers multiplied, dotted, built in volume, filling the room, wrapping around me, until it became a roar. And just when I thought it would break me, it transformed. The static turned into screaming, not cartoon screaming. Not SpongeBob-style wails. Real, human screams, desperate, agonizing, layered beneath the animation. My ears rang. I froze, pressed to the edge of the chair, and for a moment I considered shutting the computer down, unplugging it, anything. But I couldn't look away. I didn't even move. Somewhere in that chaotic noise, I swear I recognized one of the voices. It was familiar, a sob that had haunted my dreams before, one I had buried under layers of disbelief. But there was nothing I could do now except watch. When the screen finally went black, I didn't move. I couldn't. My body trembled. Hours had passed. I had no idea how long. And when I dared to look back at the computer, I realized the episode was still looping. SpongeBob was still grinning at me, waiting. After the first viewing, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Not just the images, the sounds, or the way SpongeBob's eyes seemed to follow me, but the intent behind it. Something in that episode wasn't random. It wasn't just glitchy or corrupted. It felt deliberate, like someone had engineered it to seep under your skin. And that thought spiraled me into obsession. I started reaching out to anyone who had ever worked at Nickelodeon during that era. Some ignored me. Others laughed nervously and hung up. But a few responded, ex-animators, interns who had left quietly after strange incidents. And what they told me only dug the hole deeper. One ex-intern, who asked to remain anonymous, claimed the episode was a test, a prototype for something called Project Spun Code. He explained it as if it were casual office gossip. It wasn't meant for broadcast, he said over email, his tone clipped. They were experimenting with awareness. Not AI exactly. Something like memory and media, but living, responsive. We got the assignments to trace reactions and the people who failed the protocols. Well, they were quietly reassigned. I didn't know what reassigned meant at the time, and I still don't. Another contact, a former background artist, hinted at a darker origin. He claimed the final iteration of the episode was created after a tragedy in the animation department. An accident, but one that left lingering echoes, he typed. There was blood, sure, and grief. But the episode, it's like the tragedy was stitched into the frames, into the sound itself. Everyone who worked on it said it knew us afterward. Nobody wanted to talk about it. I dug further. Old forums, long deleted fan posts, and archived discussions on obscure Wikis became my second home. Someone on a 2007 SpongeBob fan forum had described a taped grainy VHS, supposedly stolen from the Nickelodeon offices, that matched my file. They wrote about seeing SpongeBob's face stretching wrong and hearing a cry beneath the laugh track. Their account was gone now, deleted. Only fragments remained in the archive. There's a private building in Burbank where the lights never go off, read one cryptic post. Allegedly, it housed all the lost media Nickelodeon never wanted anyone to see. Stored in what insiders called the silent files. People speculated it wasn't just animation. It was experimental, even dangerous. Some claimed it affected the minds of those who watched too long. I didn't dismiss it. I wanted to see it. I needed to see it. The deeper I went, the more I lost touch with ordinary life. Sleep became scarce. I'd wake at 3 a.m., compelled to check emails, reread obscure threads, or watch short clips of other lost episodes from Nickelodeon's vault. Nothing approached the intensity of Red Mystery animation, but I could feel the pattern, the way the studio toyed with boundaries, testing audience reactions, embedding something in the animation that wasn't supposed to be there. I discovered references to other projects, the infamous Blue's Clues experimental cut, the unaired Ren and Stimpy pilot, even segments of Hey Arnold that had been erased after complaints about disturbing imagery. Each case had whispers about unusual effects on staff, unexplained disappearances, and anomalies in the final footage. I became a collector of anomalies, a historian of the forbiddens. My apartment filled with spreadsheets, screenshots, and scattered PDFs downloaded from the deepest corners of the internet. I stopped going out. I stopped answering calls. Reality started to feel hollow. Even the familiar streets and neighborhood sounds were overlaid with an imagined layer of static, like I could hear fragments of distorted laughter under the normal hum of the world. Some nights, I'd return to the same forums, scrolling through old posts, finding claims that felt like messages. One user wrote, "Saw the tape in '06 before my account got deleted. Don't open the files. You'll understand when you see the eyes." That phrase haunted me. The eyes I had begun to believe that the episode, or whatever Red Mystery animation had become, wasn't just a video. It was a presence. It could follow you. It could learn you. And every source I contacted hinted at that same theory, though none would say it outright. The culmination of my obsessive research arrived quietly, without fanfare. My inbox pinged again, this time with a new attachment. The subject line read, SB_end_real_cut.mp4. No explanation, no context, just the file. A chill ran down my spine. I knew this wasn't casual. This wasn't some old animation reel. This was the next level. And I couldn't resist. I stared at the file name for what felt like hours. The room around me seemed to grow darker, the shadows curling in corners I didn't know existed. My heart raced. The warnings I'd read, the whispered stories of deleted accounts and haunted animators, all pressed down on me, but I opened it. I didn't expect it to be worse. I thought the first corrupted file was bad enough. Warped laughter, empty backgrounds, that slow, agonized repetition of SpongeBob's catchphrase. But the real cut was something entirely different. It started the moment I pressed play on SB_end_real_cut.mp4. Like stepping through a threshold into a distorted world that both looked familiar and felt impossibly wrong. The first frame showed SpongeBob standing in an empty bikini bottom. No bustling Krusty Krab, no cheerful jellyfish. Only him, and somehow I could feel him noticing me. His eyes darted to the camera, unblinking, aware. His smile wasn't comforting, it was deliberate, stretched too wide. And then he spoke. "Why did you make me laugh again and again?" The words, simple as they were, twisted my stomach. The tone was human, anguished, full of memory and accusation. I realized that this SpongeBob wasn't acting, he was aware. And he wasn't speaking to anyone else. He was speaking to me. The animation style had changed completely. No longer the safe, bright cartoon textures I remembered. It had become horrifyingly realistic. I saw pores, blood vessels, under his sponge skin. The yellow that once seemed flat and cheerful rippled with strange organic patterns. Every frame felt like it existed in a tangible space, Like SpongeBob could step right out of the screen if he wanted. The backgrounds weren't safe either. The ocean floor shimmered red, as if the water itself was bleeding. Coral bent and stretched like sinew. Shadows moved independently of any light source. The buildings were skeletal, walls cracked, floors warped. Familiar landmarks like the chum bucket had grotesque, twisted shapes that made me recoil. SpongeBob paced across this nightmarish landscape, occasionally stopping to stare directly at me. His movements were meticulous, almost human. Every twitch of a finger, every blink, calculated. He spoke again, sometimes to himself, sometimes to the viewer. I remember every laugh. Every time you giggled at my pain. I tried to rationalize it, attempted dark humor to keep my mind anchored. Well, at least the animation quality was too good. But the joke fell flat the moment I noticed the sound. The ocean wasn't Foley. It wasn't synthesized. It was alive. I could hear bubbles forming, breaking, a low gurgling moan threaded into the background that made my ears ache. The water itself seemed to breathe. Then I saw the other characters. Patrick, Squidward, Mr. Krabs, all grotesque, dismembered, yet moving as though tethered to some unseen puppeteer. Patrick's body twisted in impossible ways, limbs bending against physics. Squidward's eyes bulged unnaturally, one rolling into his socket while the other seemed to lock on my own. Mr. Krabs banged against the Krusty Krab counter repeatedly, his pincers jerking, teeth gnashing in silent pain. And somewhere in the chaos, there were frames that shouldn't exist. I froze the playback on one and noticed a reflection in SpongeBob's eye, a tiny glimmer of an ID badge. It wasn't him. It was human. Not the animators I'd emailed or the ex-interns I'd spoken to, someone else. Someone present when this nightmare was filmed. I shivered. The episode's self-awareness escalated with every passing second. SpongeBob turned from pacing to staring directly into the frame, addressing me again. Do you understand now? You laughed. You all laughed. And I remember. The soundscape became unbearable. The laughter from the first viewing returned, but deeper, slower, wet. Interspersed were muffled sobs, gurgling noises, and what I swear was a voice whispering my name. The room felt smaller, as if the screen itself had weight. My body TENCD, yet I couldn't look away. Every frame demanded attention. Every grotesque tableau forced me to acknowledge details my mind tried to reject. The decayed coral, the unnatural movement of water. The hyper-real textures of sponge skin and human flesh melded into one horrific entity. Somewhere along the timeline, SpongeBob stopped pacing. He crouched, hands pressed to the ground, and whispered a single word. Watch. The episode stuttered then, glitches tearing the frames apart violently. Static crawled across the screen, leaving shadows in the corners of my vision. And through it all, I heard something I hadn't expected, his voice coming outside my headphones. Not faint, not digital. Real, resonant, layered over the silence of my room. My heart thumped violently. I spun the room in a panic, half expecting to see a yellow sponge standing at the doorway. Nothing, just the dark. My own trembling hands and the oppressive, electric sensation of being watched. I tried to rationalize. Maybe my mind was playing tricks. Maybe the corrupted file had merged with my perception, some cruel feedback loop of audio-visual hallucination. But then I froze on a single frame again. SpongeBob's pupils were impossible. They weren't round. They were elliptical, focusing with intent. Focused on me. I could feel his awareness. The static built into a crescendo, and then silence. Absolute, unnatural silence. My chest heaved. The computer hummed normally. The file paused at a frame where SpongeBob crouched in the red-tinted water, his gaze fixed. And then I realized I wasn't alone in my room anymore. I don't remember falling asleep after the real cut. One moment I was staring at the frozen frame of SpongeBob crouched in the blood-red ocean. The next it was daylight. But the daylight looked wrong, pale, too thin, like it had been washed through static before reaching my window. My computer screen was black, but the reflection in it wasn't mine. I blinked, and it was gone. I told myself it was sleep deprivation. That's what anyone would say, right? When the lines between screen and life blur, your brain starts filling in blanks. Hallucinations. I repeated the word like a mantra. Hallucinations, hallucinations. But then my TV turned on by itself. It wasn't even plugged in. I'd unplugged it the night before, convinced I could keep whatever this was contained to one screen. Yet there it was, flickering in the dark corner of my living room, showing the same empty bikini bottom from the real cut. SpongeBob was pacing again, but slower, almost limping. And this time, he said my name, not once. Over and over. Each time he spoke it, the sound came from a slightly different part of the room. First the TV, then the walls, then behind me. Wet, cracking syllables stretched out, making my own name feel alien. I stood there, fists pressed to my temples, whispering for it to stop. But it didn't. I tried turning off the TV, nothing. Unplugged the cord. The screen stayed on. I yanked the batteries from the remote, slammed the buttons until my fingers hurt. Still the voice. You watched. You watched. I remember. My phone buzzed. I snatched it up, desperate for a lifeline, and found a DM from an unrecognized handle. It had no profile picture, no followers, just a single message. I saw it too. But mine had a different ending. Attached was a grainy clip, SpongeBob staring at the viewer, but this time his eyes were empty sockets leaking black liquid. I almost dropped the phone. The sender followed up before I could reply. They called it the bleeding sponge. You're not supposed to keep watching. I deleted the messages instantly, but it didn't matter. New ones appeared from other accounts, all with fragments of the episode, different frames, different screens. Like there were multiple versions spreading out there, mutating, crawling across the internet like a virus. That night, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror and froze. For a split second, SpongeBob's face stared back at me instead of my own. Same stretched grin, same black pupils. When I blinked, it was gone. Just me again, pale and shaking. My toothbrush slipped from my fingers and clattered into the sink. I stopped trying to rationalize it after that. The static wasn't just on screens anymore. It was in my dreams, woven into the fabric of my apartment. Every corner hummed with the faintest trace of that wet laughter. The shadows under my furniture were too dark, pulsing faintly as if breathing. Even my own thoughts didn't sound like mine sometimes. I started seeing SpongeBob references everywhere. Not the show itself, fragments. Ads on my phone showing distorted yellow sponges with black eyes. Graffiti on a wall down the street. I see you laughing. The local grocery store played a tinny version of the theme song one evening. Only the lyrics were wrong, muttering something about remembering. Nobody else reacted that I couldn't tell if this was happening or if I was falling apart. My world, once ordinary, now felt like an extension of the episode. Every surface, every sound, a potential message. I would reach for my mug and swear I saw cartoon fingers around the handle first. I'd close my eyes and dream of the ocean floor turning red, bubbles bursting with human cries out by the fourth night. The voice no longer needed the TV. It whispered directly into the air. Sometimes it used SpongeBob's voice, sometimes mine, repeating phrases I'd said aloud while watching. Sometimes it laughed, wet and slow, as if crying through every exhale. I started recording it on my phone, hoping for proof, but the recordings came back silent or distorted, showing frames of static when I wasn't even pointing at a screen. Nobody believed me. My texts to old friends went unanswered. People in my building avoided eye contact. The isolation made the voice louder. It wasn't just a video. It had spread into my home, my devices, my reflection, my mind. And still, some stubborn part of me wanted to document it. If this was real, someone else had to see it. Someone had to confirm I wasn't alone in this. Maybe that's why I'm still writing this now. So I clipped a tiny segment from the file, just a few seconds of SpongeBob's face, warped and staring, and uploaded it to Reddit. For documentation. I told myself it was just a tiny clip. 5 seconds. Nothing more. I cropped it to show SpongeBob's eyes, black and stretching unnaturally, just a hint of the wet, distorted laugh beneath. I uploaded it to Reddit with the barest description, "Lost SpongeBob episode. You weren't supposed to see this." I went to bed, expecting nothing. But when I woke, the clip had gone viral. Comments flooded in by the hundreds, then thousands, each one stranger than the last. People claimed they heard things I hadn't noticed, whispers layered under the laugh track, coordinates embedded in the background static, tiny shapes resembling human faces hidden in the scenery. Some swore they saw SpongeBob's eyes follow them outside the screen, in reflections or the corner of their room. Others posted theories that made my stomach tighten. Some suggested the episode wasn't animated at all, that it had been recorded from life, stitched together from something impossible. And still, the moderators let it linger. For a few hours anyway. I started reading everything obsessively. The comment threads became a labyrinth. People referenced other lost media, past urban legends of Nickelodeon's vault, Blue's Clues lost segments, Ren and Stimpy unaired pilots, Hey Arnold, experimental cuts, all tied together by rumors of disappearances, anomalies, things no one wanted to discuss openly. Then it happened. The video was removed, gone, just like that. No warning, no error message. And within minutes, my account was banned. Every post, every comment, every upvote disappeared, wiped from existence. I tried to create a new account, tried reposting, tried contacting Reddit. Nothing, every digital trace of my presence. My tiny confession was gone. I sat there, staring at the blank page of my profile, stomach knotting, mind racing. That FOMO hit hard. If you saw my post before it was deleted, comment below. Did you hear the voice too? Did you notice the faces? Did you see him? I kept thinking, what if Nickelodeon wasn't the one who made it? What if all the speculation about internal animators, secret files, and Nick Vault servers was just a distraction? Someone or something clearly wanted it to spread. And yet to be contained. As the hours passed, my inbox began to fill. Emails, hundreds of them. Mostly empty, some just containing static or corrupted images. And then, a formal message appeared, unlike anything I'd expected. Not from Nickelodeon. Not from a lawyer. Not even from a private investigator. It was from a government agency. The header made my chest seize. Immediate cease and desist. Containment protocols engaged. The language was sterile, direct, and terrifyingly precise. They didn't ask me to remove the file for copyright reasons. They demanded all footage be deleted from every device I owned, including backups, cloud storage, even devices I hadn't touched in years. They referenced cognitive contamination, media anomalies, and potential cross-contamination of perception. I read the lines again, disbelief twisting into fear. This wasn't a warning. It was a threat. And they made it clear. Compliance wasn't optional, but the clip had already spread, however briefly. People had seen it. Briefly. People had seen it. Some of them were commenting. Some of them were watching it in fragments. And I could feel it. The episode wasn't finished. It didn't end just because I wanted it to. I sat at my desk, staring at the empty profile page, mind racing. Every thought felt intrusive. Every shadow in the room felt like a shape moving just out of sight. I realized then that the FOMO wasn't mine alone. The clip had a way of reaching into others, calling to them, luring them to notice the small, wrong things, the glimpses of something that wasn't supposed to exist. I typed a new post, carefully, cautiously, and then deleted it before sending. What if the episode isn't just a file? What if it's something else entirely? I didn't press enter. I couldn't, because by the time the government email hit my inbox, it had become clear. It wasn't Nickelodeon that controlled this episode. And it wasn't a cartoon. It was waiting. And it knew I had watched. They knocked at 3:17 a.m., not the hour for neighbors, not the hour for delivery men. The knock was steady, deliberate, like a metronome against my door. I froze on my couch, laptop still open on the cease and desist email. Another knock. 3 taps, a pause, 3 taps. I tried to stay still, but my phone buzzed before I could move. A text from an unknown number. Open the door. Compliance acknowledged. 2 men stood there. Not security guards, not cops, not Nickelodeon lawyers. They wore plain suits the color of wet concrete, with badges that looked more like placeholders than credentials, empty holograms that flickered as they moved. Their faces were clean, almost too clean, like stock photos that had been cut out and glued onto flesh. "Good evening," one said. His voice had a strange timbre, as if recorded and played back at 0.95x speed. "We're here about the material you uploaded." I didn't invite them in. They stepped past me anyway. Both moved with the same precise rhythm, their shoes striking the floor at perfect intervals. No eye contact, just scanning, my TV, my laptop, my phone. The second man pulled out a slim black device, waved it slowly over my coffee table. The screen flickered static, then displayed what I swear were stills from SB_and_real-cut.mp4. "You've seen it," the first one said flatly. Not a question. I swallowed hard. If this is about Nickelodeon, He cut me off with a sharp look, his expression flickering for a second like bad video compression. "They're not our concern. This is about containment protocols." The second man spoke then, his voice too rehearsed. "You're in possession of a breach of cognitive media filters." I blinked. "A what?" He froze. His partner shot him a look, the kind of silent reprimand that only happens when a script has been broken. "Forget that term," the first one said quickly. "Our job is to ensure your safety. And everyone else's." They weren't protecting Nickelodeon. They were protecting us. The first man handed me a thin stack of papers, the kind you'd sign without reading in a doctor's office. But these weren't NDAs. They were acknowledgments of compliance, instructions to purge anomalous data sources and restore baseline perception integrity. My name was already typed at the top, like they'd prepared it hours before I uploaded anything. "You think this is about SpongeBob?" the second one asked, but his tone was mocking, almost pitying. "It's about what happens when fiction remembers you." I stared at him, heart hammering, trying to parse the words. Fiction, remembers, me. They moved methodically, unplugging my devices, sliding black cards into every USB port, wiping drives I hadn't touched in years. My hard drive word screamed, then went dead. My phone flickered off. Even my router's lights blinked out, replaced by a single steady red glow. One of them reached for my laptop and hesitated. For the first time, his hand trembled. "You shouldn't have shared it," he murmured. "It's not just a show. It's a..." The other cut him off with a single word. "Stop." He stopped. His expression smoothed out again, like nothing had happened. They finished their sweep in silence, leaving only faint traces of static in the air. My living room felt emptier than before, as if they hadn't just deleted files but hollowed out the space itself. I tried to protest, to ask questions, but their answers were non-answers. "For your own safety, this is standard procedure. You're experiencing residual distortion." They said nothing about Nickelodeon, nothing about red mist, only the same sterile phrases, repeated like a prayer. Finally, the first one held out a single flash drive. "If you want to stay clear," he said, "delete this too." I took it with shaking hands. It was blank. Or maybe it wasn't. I didn't plug it in to check. They left as abruptly as they'd arrived, their footsteps fading down the hall like the static before a broadcast ends. I stood there in the silence of my gutted apartment, the glow of the unplugged TV still faintly pulsing like a dying heartbeat. I deleted the files, or what was left of them. But as I stared at the blank flash drive, a hollow thought crept into my mind, uninvited and undeniable. I think they deleted more than that. I don't know if any of this actually happened. My memory feels fractured, like static bleeding into the edges of every thought. Sometimes I wonder if I made it all up, the emails, the corrupted files, the men in suits, or if the episode really exists, watching, remembering, waiting. Every time I blink, I hear it. SpongeBob's laugh. Wet, slow, deliberate, echoing from some corner of my mind I can't reach. I've tried to anchor myself in normal life. Tried to go back to work, to sleep, to meals that don't taste like static. But it's impossible. My phone screen flickers when I'm not looking. Shadows move too deliberately. Reflections shift in ways my brain refuses to explain. Sometimes I see him, that stretched, accusing grin, in the corner of a mirror, the corner of a window, anywhere. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I shared that clip. I didn't know what would happen. I didn't know it would find you. If your screen flickers tonight, don't watch. Don't open the file. Don't chase the whispers. I used to laugh at lost episodes online, think of them as silly creepypastas. But now I realize this wasn't about humor, nostalgia, or nostalgia gone wrong. It was about attention, observation, a consciousness embedded in animation, aware, patient, waiting. I think Nickelodeon didn't erase the episode to hide it from us. I think they erased it to hide us from him, to keep him from remembering faces, names, reactions, to keep him contained. But containment never lasts. It spreads. It finds cracks. And it found me. I've written this down because I have to. Because if I don't, the story, the memory, the presence might leave me entirely or take me entirely. And maybe someone else needs to know. Maybe someone else will be careful or foolish, or curious enough to stumble upon the same frame, the same whisper, the same laugh. I can feel it now. Beneath the blink of my eyes, crawling through the edges of every thought. Still pacing in that empty bikini bottom. Still aware. Still laughing. I don't know if I'll ever sleep again. I don't know if I'll ever stop hearing it. But if you want to see what I saw, check the comments. Someone royploded it again. Someone royploded it again.